Do we have any questions for our panel? Any questions? Before you sit down, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Have I lost my microphone? Is that okay? One question. What do you think would be the real game changer here? Now, you've alluded it to, you think it's a really effective partnership working, working together, collaborating, understanding where the expertise lies, who should be supported. You've alluded to that. Would you agree that that is the thing that is really going to turn the dial here?
It's so important. So at BGV, we're a team of like 9 people, and then we're so reliant on the community around us in terms of people who can mentor and support the ventures that we support, but also other organisations. And to be honest, it's been a revelation this year working with those charities that we have been, in terms of, like, I think we're able to give something in terms of showing people different ways of doing things, but we learn so much from working with those charities about the social issues that they care about. And so, yeah, I think for us, partnership is going to be a really big part of what we do in the future.
I agree with that, but I think there's something about the way that we think about the provision of the skills that we have, and thinking about it in that way. There was somebody in the previous panel talked about how the difference between sort of high-end skills, like, sort of to kind of allow some sort of, high-end coding and kind of stuff like that, and just being able to use a phone. And there's a danger that we just recreate the divisions that exist in the current education systems and the current ways of doing. The purely brilliant thing about the digital and accessibility and the way that we can get people to access it is that everybody should be able to do this and learn this in a different way, and that we don't limit their ambition from the very beginning by saying what we're going to do is just let you access something. We want everybody to be brilliant at it, because that's the kind of the ambition that they can have, and it can be that thing. So I think it's about how we really. I think there's a danger. The way that we provide skills in this country, but particularly around digital, is that definition of madness where we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Yeah. If we really, really, really want to be digitally inclusive, if we really want people to thrive, whether they're 70 or 7, we really have to begin to do this in a different way. That's partly about collaboration. That's partly about attitude. It's partly about starting where people are. Because there's a danger that all of us are doing, not even with the best intentions in the world, we're doing stuff to people and they're not ready for it, or it's not what they want, it's not what they need to change their lives. We've got to give them the chance to really change it in the way that they want to do as well. So that was about 4 things.
And would you agree, Liz, that there have been sort of certain changes to the education system, but it's been tinkering, and that still digital isn't at the core of education. It's still somehow around the fringes.
Yeah. So can I answer the first question first, though? The one you said earlier. So I do think it's a lot about partnership, but I also think there is a genuine need to actually say what does this need to look like holistically, because there has been, Helen and I have been active in this space for, well, it's probably more years than I actually want to confess to. It's certainly a decade. And actually what you see is organisations maybe all gravitating to the same bit, and nobody's actually going, what's the full journey here? And how do we make sure we've got a proper strategy that works in all bits, even the less sexy bits? And so that's when I say joining up the system, that's what I really mean about having, challenging people to lean into all parts of it. But in terms of the education system, the Royal Society report that came out a couple of weeks ago, made some quite compelling points about what needs to happen. But, it's no different to the point about the economy. If digital is how we do things, I don't think it should be, I'm doing computer science GCSE. I think every child needs to have, in the same way that we wouldn't expect them to leave school without maths or English, they need digital, because that's what our world is.
I think just, I have a danger of sounding difficult when I say this, but the other thing we have to recognise is this is changing people's lives for the better, but it's also potentially changing people's for the worse. So if you talk to any of the big retailers, they will say the next 5 years, they think they will lose tens of thousands of jobs, not because they're looking to downsize, because the thing is just because of the way that we all change and the tech that allows us to do this means that those jobs just don't exist anymore. What we had in the 80s when we closed down those old industries was we didn't train those people, we didn't give them the skills to move on to something. So you had miners on word processors 3 years after that they'd lost their jobs in the mines, and we didn't think through that kind of thing. I was in Wales, in a really, really poor area of Wales, where they were talking about the only jobs are in the hospitality industry. They're hotels. But they've made a real effort in this part of Wales to draw people in. It's a beautiful part of the world. You talk to them about Airbnb, they call it the scab labour of their market. You know, they don't see Airbnb as a force for good. They see it as stripping away the profit. They see it as stripping away the wages for the people that work in those things. So what we have to do is really, really think this through, exactly as you're saying, from end to end. Because just giving people more digital skills so they become the badly paid digital call centre workers of the future, as opposed to the telephone call centres the worker, isn't what we're interested in. What we're interested in this being the springboard for people to really jump off and become the socially mobile country that we want to be. And that's the danger that we have to really mitigate against in here, that we just replicate what we've got already, but just digitally.
Yeah. I don't know, obviously we've got a highly intelligent audience who kind of really get that thing that at the moment with quite a lot of tech, it's created by a relatively small group of people for a relatively small group of people, and that actually there are huge benefits all round if people, all people have a level of digital skills, and it doesn't mean that you might be able to build whatever it is, but at least you know it's possible to build it, and you can create technology which is going to change and benefit your community, and bring change where it's most needed.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that 2017 was the sort of peak of tech for bad. Because, I mean, in our industry, it has been horrible. I mean, you've sort of had all the, sexual harassment. There's been real sort of nasty things going on as an industry. And, I mean, I hope that some good comes from that in terms of actually, we've certainly seen a lot of founders who've said, okay, what I want to do is now deliberately use my skills for a positive outcome rather than just be in the tech industry per se. So it's sort of do no harm is not good enough anymore. You're actually finding people who say, I want to have an intentionally positive impact on the world using my skills. And also I think you're starting to see that from funders and investors. So they're starting to say, actually, where our money goes is important. And that's why we're seeing the growth of impact investment and social investment, is people who want to make sure that their money is not only for a return, but it's producing a positive social outcome as well. And that's hopefully something that will grow over the coming years.
Yeah. And it is quite interesting when you, as I'm sure many of you do, you work in communities where there was massive job loss, a generation or two generations ago, through when, whether it's South Yorkshire and mining or, in Wales, that there is this sense of, well, why bother? Which feeds right the way through to the young people. Well, why bother? There is nothing for us. And this is what, and it's helping them understand why bother. And also, I think, because it's not just about giving those young people and people of all ages opportunities, it's about helping them really feel the benefits so that they know why they might want to be part of a digital world and how it is really going to benefit them, and that it should really benefit them, as opposed to be doing something that they go along once a week, have a cup of tea, get so far, stop, and it isn't really adding to their lives.
But digital should be the thing that, for all those who used to go to school, and somebody would come into your school from your school and they were a rocket scientist, or they were something, and they would sell you too can be a rocket scientist, and you go, you're joking, you're absolutely joking, there's no way. And that we have this kind of where we inspire people by other people who have done it, and that can be great. But now the digital capacity to learn, to acquire information, to learn in a different way, to do it in all those different ways, has to be the thing that bridges that gap now between the only way that you could be a rocket scientist in the old days was to go to, you worked really hard, you got your A-levels, you went to Oxford, you kind of did that kind of thing. We must be able to subvert those routes, that social mobility route. Digital has to be part of that route that reconnects communities into ways to really thrive and do things in a different way. That's got to be the prize from this. We're about to completely reform our economy because we're exiting from the EU. Now, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, if we're going to reform your economy, let's really reform it around the digital kind of opportunities that create it, as opposed to just make it stagnate in the places that it is and let it grow a little bit in those areas where it works. That's got to be the way that we've got to try and think about it. And digital has got to be at the heart of that different change to do that.
Yeah.
I think, sorry Maggie, I think there's also something around young, particularly very young people. I mean, we run a programme with the British Computing Society in schools called BEFIT, and it's about how you bring computational thinking to life for primary school pupils. And what we found with that programme is that it's not only about the tech skills, but it's also about the problem-solving skills that come with it. And actually what we found, we've had Ipsos Mori go in and look in 400 schools that have been part of it, where the teachers are using the computational thinking aspects, the kids are having not only better digital skills, but they've also got better problem solving and better independent working. And a lot of the skills that we were seeing come through that were exactly the kind of things that we hear from industry and we see ourselves in BT, that young people that present to us today for our apprenticeship and our grad programs don't always have. They're the things that enable you to be adaptable going forward. And I think there's something there. You know, the UK has always been a nation of problem solvers. How do we bring through the education system a nation of problem solvers that have digital at the heart of how they do it?
Can I just add to that, because it works everywhere. So when I couldn't wait to vote. I've been political since I can start a fight in an empty room. I can kind of. When I was 17 and a half, I couldn't wait to vote. I just couldn't wait to vote. But I consumed two forms of media to vote. I read The Guardian and I watched the BBC News. That was it. That was me in 1980, whatever it was. I'm not going to reveal my age either too much. My daughter voted for the first time in the last election. I watched my elder daughter, and she consumed media from such a range of different places, different opinions, different viewpoints, from Twitter, from Facebook, from Instagram, from different websites. She was reading the Washington Post, she was reading just because it was there, it was easy. And so her capacity to understand the world and access it in such a different way, and to be so better informed, so right there, it subverts so many of the problems that if you've worked in politics for 25 years, you've wanted certain newspapers not to exist because you think that they influence the agenda in a certain way. Their influence is so boundlessly not tied up in the same way when children and young people can access news and forums in different ways.
We could go and have a debate over a drink about echo chambers.
But it's not about echo chambers. It is echo chambers, of course, but if you've done this, what the point I was trying to make earlier on about if you really can use this technology and this thing to get voices beyond where they are stuck in the echo chambers. If you're in Hartlepool, I was in Hartlepool for last week. They've been in an echo chamber for decades. Yeah. They've been shouting out, "We're left behind," and nobody has been listening. Then they voted to leave, and everybody went, "Why the hell did you leave?" Because we've been shouting at you for decades and you've not been bloody listening. So echo chambers existed before technology. Technology gives us the opportunity to break beyond them in a way that they didn't have before.
Brilliant.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. I'm looking at the clock. Great panel, much passion, a conversation to be continued over a drink. Thank you very much.